stop. Don't buy a house in today's market. It's gonna crash, and you could potentially time the market perfectly and buy bottom of the market. All right, for all you watching this video, that's not what we're gonna talk about. What we're gonna talk about today is why you shouldn't purchase today, not based on trying to time the market, but rather maybe it's just not the right time for you. And we're going to get into it, talk about a few factors you should consider before buying in today's market. So the top reason why you shouldn't buy a house in today's market is because you can't afford it. I know we don't like to hear that. And there's not too many, I'd say, realtors that are going to tell you, hey, by the way, probably not a good idea if you're pushing to get into that property, if you're barely qualifying, if you don't have enough money to put towards a down payment. Most home buyers aren't prepared to put even 5 to 20% down towards their loan. That is a lot of money because home values have appreciated so significantly over the last 3 years. So if you are purchasing a home and you don't have a large down payment, I'm going to suggest you hold off. I know you found the perfect house and it may not be there tomorrow, but it's better to be financially and fiscally conservative in today's market. Try to come up with 20%. If you put down 20% towards a mortgage, your rates are more than likely going to be better, your risk is going to be less, and your mortgage payment's going to be less as well. Really try to save for your down payment. It makes a world of difference. Most home buyers can figure out what their mortgage payment is by just logging on to the internet and figuring out and finding a mortgage calculator. But what they don't tell you, especially for people who have been renting for a long time, is how much it costs to maintain a home. It can be expensive. In fact, I have a lot of trees on my property, and no word of a lie, it was thousands of dollars to get my trees trimmed. My neighbors were very concerned about it, and that was a cost I didn't foresee this year. So for those of you who are renting or have a history of renting for long periods of time, you don't even think about that stuff. You don't think about that maybe there could be a plumbing leak, or wow, the gardening services cost X amount, or hey, I better put some money aside because that AC condenser is looking a little tired. You don't worry about that if you're a renter, but when you're a homeowner, you got to think about these things. It's always a good idea to have 3 to 6 months reserves, meaning whatever your mortgage payment is, times it by 6. Have a special emergency fund set aside in case these things arise. I just had somebody call me this morning saying, hey, Audra, I was thinking about renting my house out, but unfortunately there's a lot of deferred maintenance on the property. And at this point in time, I can't afford to do all this deferred maintenance on my property. My response to that is, then you probably shouldn't have purchased it. And you probably got over your head, and you probably have no business owning the home if you can't maintain it. And listen, I think everyone deserves a home, but there's a time and place for everything. And if you are purchasing a home, you need to have the finances and the strength behind it and the discipline to set money aside to, we'll just say, take care of things when, Murphy's Law happens and something bad's going to happen as soon as you purchase the house. Do not just skimp by and barely try to pay that mortgage payment. If it's a struggle, I say don't buy. A lot of you are working with buyer's agents, but please understand that their number one motivation is to get a transaction closed. They don't know your financial situation. They're going to try to push you into something that you may not feel comfortable. And to be fair, they're just trying to do their job. But it is up to you to direct the process. So if buying right now doesn't make sense, you get a little nervous, you're wondering how you're going to cover that mortgage, I'm going to highly encourage you to step back and don't feel the pressure that maybe mom and dad want you closer, or you're hearing a lot of pressure from your friends. They just moved down the street, you should too. When it's the right time, it should make sense, and it shouldn't feel overwhelming to purchase a home, financially anyway, meaning that you're just barely making ends meet to come up with a mortgage, because there are so many other costs that are involved in maintaining a home. Now, if you're buying a property, you still have closing costs. It's about 1 to 2% of the sales price. And if you are selling your property, it's probably 6 to 7% of the sales price. I did do a video on, the costs involved in any escrow. It goes over the closing costs. I will link that video down below if you'd like to look at that in a little bit more detail. But anytime you're transacting, buying or selling a property, there are closing costs, and they are very expensive. So be mindful and aware of that. Now, I'm not suggesting to any of my clients currently to purchase a house right now if it's only a short-term stay, meaning 5 years or less. There's so much transactional costs in selling and buying that it doesn't make sense if you're going to live in the property for a very short period of time. Ideally, I always like to say, try to hold your property for 10 years minimum. If you can hold your property for 10 years or more, those transactional costs get averaged down. So it helps you a little bit with your profit when you go to sell your property. If you can hold it longer, because those transactional costs are pretty substantial. For example, I had a client sell their property and just needed a place to land. They didn't want to rent, so they bought a smaller property that was a temporary property. Needless to say, they did the forbidden, happened upon an open house. They just had to purchase the house, and boy, is it beautiful. And so they did, and now they come back to me and they say, Audra, we need to sell this house. I'm like, well, you just bought it 4 months ago. Like, we got to sell it. So I did sell the property for more money. We got a great buyer, great terms, but even though we sold it for more money, they walked away with a loss because the transactional costs were so high. So it's really important that when you are buying a house, remember that you need to really wait 7 to 10 years. I really want to say 10 years at a minimum to really get, your costs and your profit working for you. So if it's a short-term, investment, oftentimes those don't work out financially for you. Let's talk financing. So for you buyers out there, there's a lot of creative financing going on right now because buyers are really struggling with those monthly payments. A common financing option is what they call the 2-1 buy down. And how that works is, let's use a hypothetical number of 7%. Let's say the mortgage rates are around 7%. You will pay, let's say, anywhere from 2 to 2.5 points or 2 to 2.5% on the loan amount to buy down the mortgage rate. And how that works is at 7% mortgage rate, the first year you buy down the rate so it's at 5%. And then the second year you would buy it down 1%, 2 to 1, right? So then it would be 6%. And then it would automatically, after the third year, would go back to that 7%. Okay? A lot of people love that. A lot of new developers or new home builders are offering that to their buyers. You know what? I'm not in love with it. I am just not in love with it. And let me tell you why. The reason why I'm not in love with it is because those buyers get real comfortable with that 5% mortgage rate. Okay, like, oh, cool, I can handle that payment. Now, keep in mind, these lenders who are offering this 2-1 buy down, they are qualifying the buyer at that 7% level. But I'm just telling you, mentally, like, it's really hard to go from 5% to 6% to 7% over a 3-year period. Another reason why I'm not a big fan of this program is because what happens if the rates go below, let's say, 6 or 7%? And then you're thinking, maybe I need to refinance to get that lower rate. But what happens if you can't qualify anymore and now you're locked into 7%? I'm not in love with it, right? If I was a buyer right now, I would ask the builder, if I'm working with a builder, to reduce the price. Now they're gonna, fight you on that because they don't want to have low comps for the other phases. So they may not do that. But if you're dealing with a seller who is open to that, maybe it makes sense to lower the price of the property to help you get a lower, monthly mortgage rate because the loan amount isn't as much. And guess what? Your property taxes are based on that lower number. Just something to think about. So right now, I'm not a big fan of that 30-year fixed mortgage. I know I'm feeling hate vibes come through the camera right now. I just don't like it. Consider the source though, right? I've moved 11 times in 21 years. I don't know too many people that hold their houses for 30 years. And if you are one of those, congratulations. I'm serious about that. But most of us don't. And right now, to secure a 30-year fix, the rates are already high, and that mortgage rate is guaranteeing a 30-year secured fixed rate. It's going to be very high. You're going to be spending a lot of costs to finance your house if you're doing a 30-year fix. I like the 7-in-1 ARM product. I like the 10-in-1 ARM product. You could always refinance throughout those years. I just 30-year fixes are expensive, and you don't start paying down your principal for several years into the product. Just something to consider. I would talk to your lender about that. But not loving the 30-year fix right now. It's really expensive. Now, I've listened to a lot of realtors and a lot of lenders say, don't do interest-only mortgages. Oh my gosh, you're not gonna be responsible. You're gonna foreclose on it. And there's so much risk around it, yada, yada, yada. But let me tell you the benefits of interest-only if you can find it. First thing is you can recast your mortgage every single month. What is recast, okay? So recast means that if you want to put down, $10,000 towards your mortgage payment, your principal automatically adjusts. So your next month payment is lower, slightly lower. In a standard 30-year fixed mortgage, if you go put $10,000 towards your principal, your payment is still the same. Now you can go ask your banking institution to recast your mortgage payment, but they're going to ask you to go get this big long, paper to get notarized that you're in agreement, and you're going to have to pay about $150 to get the recast. It's ridiculous. It's a total ripoff. So I'm responsible. Now, I'm never going to recommend an interest-only mortgage unless you're responsible. And let's be fair, folks. If you're not responsible, you have no business owning a property anyway. So I would really talk to your lender or trusted advisor about your financing options. I love interest only. If I can get interest only, I'll do it all day long. But keep in mind, I'm very disciplined about setting money aside every month and paying down that principal as soon and quickly as I can. Do not purchase a house if you have bad credit. If your FICO scores are poo-poo, we don't buy a house. The lending institutions are going to tell you that you're high risk and they're going to offer you a higher rate. This is no bueno. Don't do it. Like, hunker down, go live with mom and dad, rent a room somewhere, live below your means, and work with your lender to help repair your credit. It's going to be hard in the short term, but it will pay in the long run. In my experience, I'd say 25 to 30% of the buyers have buyer's remorse after they purchase the home. Now, I'll link a few surveys down below that you can read up on. There was a recent one that came out that said 93% of buyers have buyer's remorse. I'm thinking that's not very accurate. Some of the top reasons why buyers have buyer's remorse is because they felt like they spent too much money for the property, or they felt like they bought a fixer and they don't have the money to do the repairs, or they didn't do the research and they don't like their neighbor, or they don't like their location. Or a lot of these buyers have bought in sight unseen, and when they go to move into the property, it's not what they expect. I've had a lot of people move from California out of state, and although they might like the politics or the school district or their neighbors better, they miss home. So when you're moving or buying a property, make sure you spend the time to really do your due diligence and know that that's the right place for you. It may not even be a bad idea to rent in the neighborhood to make sure that makes sense for you and your family. I am not great at budgeting. I'm going to suggest that you seek somebody out that teaches you or watch YouTube videos on how to do that. I am working on that. I'm getting myself out of a hole. I just want to pass my knowledge on to you. When I was raised, I'm kind of the older generation, and, I was always told, save your money and don't worry, your husband will take care of everything. So it took me a long time to figure this out on my own. So the one thing I will say that has probably been the most rewarding for me is that it's always a good idea to live below your means. There will always be a house for you. There will always be opportunities for you. But if you don't have the discipline, the patience, and the metrics in place to support some of your investments, you're going to lose it. So just understand the downsides. My name is Audra Lambert. For those of you who have never met me before, I'm a realtor in good old Orange County, California. I'm one of the top producers out here. And if you wouldn't mind subscribing to my channel and smashing that like button, I would forever be grateful. And if you have any other topics that you would like me to discuss, please leave it in the description box below. If and when it's time to purchase a property, I'm highly going to recommend that you spend your time in finding the right representation. You don't want a buyer's agent that is just going to push their agenda and make you feel uncomfortable. So take your time in interviewing these agents. It's really that important. So buying a property may not be as advantageous as you might have thought. So take your time, put yourself on a budget, make sure you know what you're getting yourselves into. And for us older generation folks, which I think most of the people watching this channel are, let's make sure we educate the younger generation. I know I didn't have that education. There's a lot out there. I'm just jibber jabbering. Anyway, all right. Hope you got some value out of this video, and please smash that like button and subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.